Hi guys, Jill from Sketching Pad with our cityscape silhouette scene. You're going to need your bucket of water, your watercolor palettes, your brush, pencil. If you have some masking tape or painter's tape and a piece of cardboard, you can tape your watercolor paper to it or even tape it straight to your table. If you don't have the tape or a piece of cardboard, it's totally fine. You don't have to tape your paper down. I just like to because it keeps it from moving around too much. We've got our sample over here. So the first thing we're going to do is kind of draw where our horizon line is. So this line right here. I'm going to go not quite in the middle. I'm going to be a little further up from the bottom, so closer to the top. And you're going to draw it as straight as you can. If you have a ruler and you want to use a ruler, definitely can. But I'm going to make it just as straight as I can, right across. Just like that. Then the second part we're going to do is draw in our buildings. Now, most of them are just rectangle shapes connected together. So what I'm going to do is start drawing on how I want my buildings to be. I'm going to try and get them as close to this sample as possible. So some rectangle shapes, and you want to leave some space in between them, and you want some taller and some shorter. So this one, I'm going to do a rectangle. And then I'm going to do a catty corner triangle, just like that. And you can erase any lines that you go mess up with. Just make sure you're not bearing down really hard with your pencil. You're nice and soft pressure with your pencil. And that way you'll be able to erase any pencil lines really easily. On this one, I'm going to do a fat rectangle shape first. And then I can do just a little square on the top, like that. So the trick to doing any kind of drawings, especially when you've got shapes like this, is to do that, is to just break it down into shapes. So this, it's got the rectangle here and then a triangle on top. Just like that. And the same thing I'm doing with this one, I kind of do with this one, which is I'm going to do a fatter rectangle first, and then a small rectangle on top. And I'm trying to make them all a little different heights and sizes. Go up, do a rectangle there. And then this one, I'm pretty much doing a box and then a sideways rectangle going up. So your box, rectangle, a little bit smaller rectangle, and then a square. You know what? That's a little crooked. Try that again. There we go. That's better. Then our last one will go off the side. over here. Now, you notice I didn't worry about any of these little parts because I'm going to go in and add those now. Just like that. And so when I paint these in, I'm not going to worry about my lines right down there. We do need to go ahead and draw in our squares for our windows. So those are just little tiny squares or little tiny rectangles. You can have a lot of windows, just a couple of windows. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to go with roughly what our sample looks like. Just like that. Alright, so if you have any little places you want to erase, go ahead and erase them. Like that. Alright, so I'm going to start with doing my water first, and we're going to do a technique called wet on wet. So you're going to paint your paper with water first. And you want it to be fairly wet. It doesn't have to be absolutely soaking, because if it's too wet, your paper will fall apart. And be pretty careful along your horizon line. So just kind of press down on your brush and you'll get a nice crisp edge. Everywhere else, painting it on. And if you kind of get down at a little bit of an angle to your paper, you'll be able to see where you've got water and where you don't. Alright. Now, we're going to start painting in our water. So, water is watercolor's friend. So we're just going to go in, we're going to load up our brush really well with our paint and just start painting on. Now you see how it spreads out super well because the water is on there. That'll make it easier with your painting, filling it in. You won't get really harsh lines. It'll blend out really well, and you'll get some lighter areas and some darker areas naturally. Get all the way to your edges. If you have the tape and you want to tape around the whole piece of paper on your table or on your cardboard, you absolutely can, but it's not necessary. Yeah, you are going to want your water slightly lighter up here at your horizon line. It doesn't have to be completely lighter, but a little lighter. Also, if you want to make a little bit more of an aqua color water, you can do that. You've got two ways to do that. You can add a tiny bit of green into your water and just kind of let it blend out like that. Or you can add just a little bit of yellow and blue together and make a more greeny aqua shade like that. So you can mix your color kind of on the lid of your watercolor palette. You can get a more aqua shade for your water. Alright, so now that we've done the water, I'm going to let that dry. So we're going to go up here and do pretty much the same thing. Oops, now if you do anything like that, don't worry. Just take your paper towel, kind of blot it off just like that. Now, our buildings are going to be black, so if you accidentally get any of your water inside the building, it's all right. It'll cover really, really easily. All right, so for our sunrise or sunset, you're doing the same thing. You're gonna wet your paper and paint in your background. Now be careful around your buildings. If you get inside your buildings a little bit, it's fine. You really want to watch where the windows are though, because you don't want to have the sky in your windows, because it makes it look like your window, the sky is through the windows, and we're trying to make it look like the windows have lights on. All right, so I'm going to start with my red first, and that's going to be right up here at the top. The more color you have, the darker it'll be. The more white you have, the lighter it'll be. And then as I go down, I'm going to add some yellow in there first, because I want my orange to be really bright. So if I add a little bit of yellow first, when I put some of my orange in there, it'll be a little bit brighter. And I'm just going back and forth. And then as I go down, I'm going to use more yellow all the way down. Just be really careful, kind of in between your buildings. And remember, if you get any paint inside your buildings or inside your windows, just take your paper towel and you can lighten it or damp it off. If your background gets either too wet and starts pulling and making a puddle of water, just go in with your brush that's dried off and you can soak up some of that water. And you can have a really yellowy orange sky. You can make it more red and orange if you want. There's really no right or wrong way to the sunset or sunrise, whichever it is. So we got a nice sunset going on. I'm going to go back and add a little more orange in here. I'm going to get my orange pretty wet so it's not super thick. I'm going to add some orange in there. Go over my yellow a little bit and my red a little bit. And you don't want to have like a lot of lines. You want to make sure it blends together really well. I'm going to go over my red with my orange to get it to be a little more orangey red, just because I like it better that way. All right, so now we've got to let it dry before we start doing any of our buildings. All right, so now that our background is all nice and dry, we can go ahead and start putting in the buildings. And you're gonna do, you can use a smaller brush for this, or you can use your regular brush. But all we're gonna do is really make our black thick, so that way it can cover really well and fill in nice and solid. So all you're gonna do is start filling in your buildings with your black paint. Now remember, you still want to add water to it, but you do want it to be pretty thick instead of a little bit thin how we did our water and our sky. You want your black paint to be really thick. Now if you accidentally go outside the lines of your buildings, it's okay, but a trick to get your nice smooth lines is to take your brush, lay it down kind of flat, just go nice and smooth along the edges. Now remember what I said about not worrying about these lines in between where our little spaces are, because all I'm going to do is paint over them. Alright, so we're just going to fill in our buildings with our black. Nice and solid. Now, you want to be really careful around your buildings. Just go really slow around your windows. I said buildings, I meant windows. Around your windows, just go nice and slow. All you're gonna do is fill them all in. Alright, so we've got our buildings all filled in, and I went around all my windows, so those are not filled in. If you have any thin spots you need to kind of go back over, do that. Now we can do our reflections. If you have a marker and you want to do this with a marker instead, you can. Just make sure that these are dry before you do. I don't have a marker, so I'm just going to do it in paint. We're going to use the black paint. I'm not going to have it quite as thick, so I'm going to thin it down with some water. And all you're doing is kind of under where your buildings are, you're going to do little zigzaggy lines. Just like that. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be together all the way. This is just the reflection of your buildings. You want to be thicker down here at the bottom where they meet your buildings, and then you can make them thinner or skinnier as you go towards the top. It's kind of like doing a tornado down like that. You can go back and add some more lines if you need to. But again, this is just the shadow, or I'm sorry, the silhouette of the buildings. And they can connect together a little bit if you want. Go back over and make them a little thicker. Just little dashy kind of squiggles going up. And that is your sunset city silhouette. Oh, one more thing. If you want this little guy up here, the little antenna, you just draw a little line like that. You could also do it with a pen if that's easier for you on there. So I hope you enjoy your painting.